For today's final conversation, please welcome the VP of Global Social Impact and Sustainability at Expedia Group, Aditi Mohapatra, and the President and CEO of Destination Greater Victoria, Paul Nursey. In conversation with Skift Editor-at-Large, Lebawit Girma.
Hello, welcome Aditi and Paul. So nice to have you here today. We have the privilege of wrapping up this super interesting conference on sustainability. And as you've heard throughout the day, or maybe you have or not, but there's been a lot of focus on collaboration among the sectors in tourism to push for action in sustainability. And the two of you know a lot about that. So we have, we're going to hear from you in terms of your work from the private OTAs, sector for Aditi, and Paul at the destination level. And Paul, I'm going to kick off with you because I know that sustainability is certainly not a new concept for you at Destination Greater Victoria. You've been pushing on that level since before COVID. But I'd love for you to give us an overview of what you've really pushed on in terms of action at your destination level, and give us a sense of what your new models are.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. Just quickly before I begin, I want to quickly acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the traditional territories of Lekwungen speaking peoples, our Indigenous communities. And it's so important to provide a land and territory acknowledgement in terms of proper protocol and respect. In terms of our sustainability journey, it really came to me in 2015. I was appointed the CEO here in 2014, and that takes some time just to learn about things. But this community is very green and very sustainable already. And I was very worried about that our destination was out of touch with the broader society. We started having governments declare climate emergencies and things of that nature. So we created something called the Impact Sustainability Travel and Tourism Conference as an action back in 2016, 2017. First one was 2018 to help translate big ideas like the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals into action. Because we would sit in our chairs and actually say, as practitioners, how would we actually do this? How can we actually make it happen? It's great to go to global fora and learn, but we didn't know how to make it happen. And it's very practical, hands-on conference, and it's grown to be a very strong event annually, which is fantastic. And then more concrete from a model. We live in a capitalist society. There's often talk about is sustainability compatible with capitalism. Often that some of those thoughts can get out there. So that's where we really embrace the idea of the circular economy in terms of a model, which is very much something that we can get together as a mid-sized destination. We have a global brand, but we are a mid-sized destination. If we work together through we embrace some of the models of Dr. Pauline Sheldon out of Hawaii. And it really is that circular economy that we can really wrap our heads around as an industry and, dig into more discreetly. And then how we action that is we created a sustainability committee where we're creating initiatives that fall out of it. So it's taking it from this almost impossible task into what is a model that we can work with, and then how do we action it? That's the high level version of it. Yeah.
And the sustainability committee, you work with stakeholders from different areas, different industries. And how has that changed how you work with your suppliers?
Yeah. So, for example, this has really helped us with sourcing. And this could be anything from how hotels source the variety of different elements, how we choose partners as a DMO. We've chosen to set the tone at the top and be carbon neutral as a DMO, and our conference center has as well too. So we've gone through that rigorous process. We have transportation experts at the sustainability committee. We have local governments at the committee, and of course industry. We really want to be the clearinghouse for these initiatives. And if we do things together, we pick the things that are going to accomplish the most and then dive into it. Right now, we're really focused on delivering on our biosphere accreditation, but we're going to move into more action as well.
Okay. Aditi, you joined Expedia in 2021 as their lead of social impact sustainability. I can only imagine that you have lots going on with different initiatives, but what's the one that's really top of mind for you right now?
Yeah, so let me also say thank you so much for having us here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, so joined in 2021, right in, still in the midst of the global pandemic and really looking to accelerate action, right? Like how can Expedia Group add value to this space? What are Expedia Group's unique offerings and opportunities to really drive and deliver social impact and sustainable development across travel and tourism? Personally, I've worked in the corporate sustainability space for many years, but I'm new to travel. So it was really a unique opportunity to look within, the company and identify what are our unique ads that we can add value to the world. And so that's looking at our data, at our technology, at all of our business relationships, and then what's happening across the travel ecosystem already, where we don't need to duplicate efforts. We can join in partnership. As you mentioned, collaboration has been a big theme, and we've been able to join some key industry initiatives to get going. And then also, of course, doing our deep work that we need to do internally, building out our infrastructure, our measurement, our techniques, advancing across our marketplaces. So that work will take some time. And at the same time, we know there's a lot of ways in which we can get going right now. And frankly, the world needs us to get going right now. So we're excited about several different initiatives that we'll be kicking off in the coming months as well. And I'll have an opportunity to share a little bit more with you in just a moment as well. Yeah.
So speaking of that, how is Expedia taking steps to connect? We'll get to the consumer part in a bit, but how do you connect the dots for destinations or other suppliers on making sustainability in action?
Yeah, so I think, we think about ourselves as an important kind of connector between traveler interest and demand and, showcasing that to our partners across the travel ecosystem. So, of course, you heard from my colleague earlier, Jennifer, about the research that we're conducting. And we do that kind of research through our media solutions team to identify traveler interest in different dimensions of sustainability, also to kind of translate what does sustainability mean to travelers and to bring that information and those insights back to our travelers. We also are working across our own marketplaces to improve disclosures and to see what works, what resonates with travelers, and again, to bring that information and those insights back to our partners. But aggregating demand and creating demand for sustainable travel, I think, is an important tool that we have to own within our ecosystem. But the truth is that I think many of our travel partners, destinations, hotels, airlines, everyone's aware, everyone's working on these issues, and all of our goals are really deeply interconnected, right? So I think when we think about things like net zero commitments, travel partners, lodging, destinations, they're all part of our scope 3 emissions. We're all in this together and really have to work collectively around some of these solutions. So we're also looking to them to say, what's important to you? How can we help accelerate some of your priorities? How can we help in areas that maybe you have some gaps that we have particular tools to add? And they've come back with some interesting, innovative ideas in that way as well.
So I know you're working on a carbon impact listing. Is that right? And I don't know if that's still in the works or how much you can share about that. But yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're definitely looking to improve kind of our sustainability disclosures across our marketplaces for our travelers. I think carbon is an element of that we're looking at. But I think, it's also where we are today is to just give indications of what good looks like and to get more good supply into our ecosystem, right? So I think starting to distinguish too much between this money, kind of megatons of carbon and this much is challenging for travelers to navigate. And at this time, at this scale, we just want more hotel partners, we want more airlines, we want more destinations just coming to the table on sustainability and starting to be able to direct our travelers towards sustainable options. So I think, right now our model is really about indicating what sustainable options exist, and to try to increase the supply of sustainable options for our travelers as well.
And, we've heard today, part of the issue is also consumer action, right? You need to provide choices, but then consumers need to act on it. Paul, how are you reaching your consumers as directly as possible to educate them on sustainable options?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it all comes back to authenticity, right? And we're very fortunate to, the consumers are smart, whether it be in the direct consumer in the leisure space, or of course the meetings, conference and sports bidding channels, which any tourism board or DMO is involved in. And as I mentioned earlier, sustainability is at the essence of our community here in Victoria. So it is central to our brand proposition. So that's one way that we're reaching out, and that everything we communicate is centered on the values of who we authentically are here in Greater Victoria. But more specifically, on the meetings side of the business, we have a conference center. It's only so big, and we're a highly desirable destination. So we prioritize the conferences that we go after, that we bid on, and that we incentivize. Just like every tourism board has a business development fund, we do as well too, and we can actually be choiceful about who we go after. And then when it comes down to the final pitch, if we're shortlisted to the top 3 destinations that the board has, our track record of really being engaged in sustainability since 2015 really helps us win more often than not. I can go in to that boardroom, or my vice president of sales can, and say, here's your ESG statement, and here's what we delivered here in Victoria, and our closing ratio is quite high. So that creates a compounding effect, like a flywheel effect, that great sustainable conferences want to come to Victoria. We just hosted the TTRA, Travel Tourism Research Association Global Conference last week, and that was one of the reasons they came, and others. So we create momentum that way on the B2B side, which also further enhances the brand. But it's because we really do deliver on it, and it's really important to us, and people can come, and we create offsites and learning experiences that can showcase even to the most savvy partners. And on the business to consumer side, we're fortunate here on the west coast of North America to be able to market into progressive cities like Seattle and San Francisco, Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, to go after those fully independent travelers, those high yield and high values customers for our base of hotel stays. And so that's what we focus on, both in the leisure and in the business to business side. And it starts by being truly authentic as to who you are as a destination.
Great. Aditi, to go back to how do you bring on more businesses? We heard earlier from Skift Research, and the numbers are pretty daunting in terms of how many companies are really acting on, even from a climate standpoint or from a sustainability standpoint. And is that part of your mandate to sort of push them forward and show why it would be beneficial for all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that is definitely part of our mandate, and that is exactly what we're trying to do. I mean, I think the more travel companies that are acting on sustainability, again, the better the overall industry and the more sustainable the overall industry. And that is absolutely connected to our own targets and our goals as a company, and then the supply that we can provide to our travelers, given how much interest we are seeing in sustainable travel options. So we do see ourselves as a kind of connector between travel demand and travel interest, and sustainable travel demand and interest, and translating that to our hotel and lodging and other modes of travel as well, partners. So it's really important to bring that data, that insight to them, and then some of the tools and techniques and how they can start to green and get kind of more sustainable in their operations as well. So we're looking at different solutions for different travel segments. What can we do with destinations specifically? That can be helping to create kind of climate champions within different destination boards. That's a concept that we're considering with some partners at this moment. We're also looking at how we can provide better guidance to hotels on what it looks like to green their hotel operations. We have some good tools and techniques as part of our UNESCO Sustainable Travel Pledge that we've put out there as well. We're also looking at existing resources that are through initiatives like the Hotel Sustainability Basics that Inga just talked about, for example. And then we are, proud partners as part of the Travelist Coalition, where we're helping to set a standard of what is expected of our travel partners when it comes to sustainability as well.
Great. Let's talk about social sustainability, which really has taken on also greater focus, which I'm happy to see in some respects. The importance of preserving local culture, and also the importance of tourism benefits spreading, more broadly to those who actually host visitors. How do you think of achieving this from your respective sectors? Paul, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. It's a vital question, and one that we're just trying to really do the right things in. And it's really tricky for me as a Caucasian male leader to make sure that I have to acknowledge the privilege that I have and commit to do things better. But what I want to maybe touch on is our work with Indigenous communities, and something that's quite broad across Canada. And I will say, our organization, we're a little bit late, but there's some great work happening now through a memorandum of reconciliation. Our local Indigenous community, the Songhees community, whose traditional territories that we're on, our Empress Hotel, our flagship hotel, is actually on their traditional clamming beds, and it was where they would greet other nations up and down the coast. And you can see that juxtaposition here. And through tourism and through the visitor economy, they're reclaiming their identity with walking tours and canoe tours. And there's a tremendous consumer demand for that. And what we're helping with is capacity building, research, marketing support, and really making sure that we're always there. But we have to understand that some of these communities have suffered tremendous traumas and only have, whether that be the residential school system or other things related to colonialism, and there's only so much capacity. So we're doing the best to help with capacity building, knowing that market demand might actually outstrip the community's ability to deliver. And so we just want to make sure that we're doing this in lockstep, that it's their stories to tell. It's certainly not our story to tell, but this community, the Songhees Nation, has chosen deliberately through strategic planning process that tourism is going to be a force for good, part of reclaiming who they are. Some of those pictures that you just showed, I thought were quite striking, as you can actually see the colonial buildings juxtaposed against their cultural identity. So that's a pathway that we're on, and it's very genuine, and hope that it helps create new generations to share sacred stories.
So to jump off of that just quickly, I recently experienced Indigenous tourism in Wendake, in Quebec province. And what was interesting, and one of the Indigenous tourism-led businesses told me, is that a lot of times they have a problem with appropriation. And so they'll come into the tourism chain and have a business and start doing well. But then here comes a non-Indigenous owned company that's bigger, has more money, and is selling the same tour for a lot more money. And so is that sort of what's the responsibility at the destination level to?
That's a great question. So fortunately, we do. This is part of our memorandum of reconciliation. We host workshops together. Fortunately, access to lands and sacred lands. So, for example, some islands here are actually controlled through council band motions. So they actually got to go to the Indigenous band, and so there are mechanisms in place, and it's our job to help educate what is appropriate ways to approach communities, engage with communities, what's appropriation, what's not appropriation. And so collaborating and being very humble and making sure that, this is their territory, right? And who are we to exploit it? And I think it's a long way than where we came from in tourism Canada in the 90s, where we saw latent interest in Indigenous tourism, largely from Europe, and it moved too fast. It moved ahead of the communities. And so we really need to make sure that we're just taking cues from our local communities. It's tricky, though. It's super tricky. Yeah.
Right. Aditi, how is Expedia moving through this social sustainability aspect and bringing in communities?
Yeah, so I think the way that we think about it at Expedia Group, I mean, we absolutely are committed to helping and support local businesses. And the way that we've been thinking about it is very much tied to the direction that our business is headed overall. We are on a journey to help democratize access to the travel economy is what we talk about. And we've talked recently about our new open world technology platform, which is really meant to help any business of any size power their businesses through Expedia Group technology. And so my team is really thinking about how do we leverage that platform and how do we bring those capabilities to a wider range of businesses around the world. In particular, those businesses that are local to different communities, that are important to different travel destinations, as well as businesses that are led by women, by Indigenous entrepreneurs, by different underrepresented groups throughout travel. How do we power those businesses and ensure that they have access to the travel economy, which we think is really a unique kind of ad that we have to be able to offer this space with scale, with our technology and with our capabilities. And I will say that with in many conversations with different destinations, we've asked, how can we help support your destination? How can we help support the rebound of travel, and many of them have said, they would love for us to help them build products that are local to their community. And to be able to do that, we do think that our digital tools and our technology and our open world platform are kind of key ingredients to accelerating that process. So we're looking at building out a program to really be able to leverage a lot of our new capabilities in this space.
Which is about equity and inclusion, really. Today, which there's a tech side, and then there's the community trust level, which Paul touched on, and I do want to touch on the Travelist connection with Expedia. And I have to be honest, I'm a CN campaign led by a member of the even if still a member of the sort of a member of the royal family. Out of Britain, driving the climate message to me is I have a real problem reconciling that with the effort behind it. I mean, isn't that not a risk also that other communities of color will not connect with that message because of the face behind it? And are those things that you even consider?
I mean, I think we absolutely consider in our direct marketing and advertising, the kinds of voices that we're putting forward and the kinds of representation that we have throughout Expedia Group. And that's kind of really what the piece of things that I can speak to. We're not, responsible ultimately for all marketing and advertising on climate and sustainability, but absolutely within ours, we're very intentional about bringing in diverse voices and diverse representation. We know that people who don't see themselves in travel, that's a big barrier for many in being able to access and experience travel. Representation is incredibly important. Who's actually designing the marketing campaigns, who's behind it is really, really important. And we've done a lot of work in this respect. We've added, more information across our marketplaces to identify properties that are, for example, LGBTQ friendly and welcoming. And, hotels can sign up as that, and travelers can surface those and identify those kinds of properties. We also had a process last year where we, through the traveler review process, ask travelers to identify if their review would be helpful for particular communities. So for example, for women traveling alone, for Indigenous travelers, for different identities. And we've received over 500,000 different reviews that we're going to be pushing back out to our travelers so that they can also understand the experiences of people who look and who are like them in these travel spaces as well, and to really be able to bring that kind of content directly to our travelers. So absolutely, we're thinking about it in everything that we do. Travel equity is a big focus of ours as a company, and really looking at what are ways in which we can make kind of our marketplaces today more inclusive, our advertising more inclusive, and then what are the barriers that exist throughout the industry, and how can we address some of those systemic barriers as well. So yes, it is absolutely front and center for us.
Great to hear. How do we mainstream this to consumers? How do we mainstream sustainable tourism to consumers? Any thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, I think we just keep telling the story. And what I'm learning from the research is that there's a growing customer demand for sustainable travel, and that will mean slightly different things to each consumer segment and each consumer as an individual, but ignoring it and not dealing with it is certainly not a key to business success. Every data point will show you that. One of the key features that we do at the Impact Sustainable Travel and Tourism Conference is we make it very public. We share a conference proceedings paper. We invite media. We invite 15 media, and it's a warts and all conference. It's the good and the bad, but we think it deserves to be covered, and because it's a journey and it's an imperfect journey. So expanding, how we're telling that story is so critically important. And again, if you're authentic and you're trying really hard, I think that goes a long way with consumers and any kind of third-party influencer as well too.
I have to say I did watch your part of your Impact conference, and there was a keynote from one of your Indigenous leaders. Trying to remember his exact name, but it was so powerful, and I think that it would be nice to see more of that.
Yeah, I think that was maybe Dr. Yeah, it was Wade Davis, and yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Wade Davis, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So biggest challenges, because our topic here really is broadening this whole sustainability framework, and I'd love to hear what you think are some of the key biggest challenges at the moment from your respective lenses?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to start. And I think, Paul has definitely hit on some of these points, but just to reemphasize, I think authenticity is going to be absolutely critical. I mean, consumers across the board are getting so much more discerning about what is real and what is not in the space of sustainability. And we know the travel industry has, a lot of attention on marketing and advertising. And I think that it's just going to be really critical that we layer in real, authentic impact and action behind all of the work that we're doing. So that is something that will continue to be an area of focus, I think, for all of us. I think also in getting just more players involved. I think I joined the travel industry, as I mentioned, about a year ago, and it's great to see the range of different actors. And soon I realized it's kind of the same faces in a lot of these discussions,
Yes.
right? And I think we absolutely have to widen the tent and bring in more actors. I mean, this is a giant industry, and there's so many more players who are not at the table today. So I think making sure that we are creating a space that everyone can, yes, feel slightly competitive, but feels like we're all working towards the same set of solutions or a similar set of solutions, and that we're in this together, I think is really, really important, because, we're talking about the traveler side a lot, but the action side really has to come from the industry, and we need to really be able to accelerate that. And I think getting more players to the table is going to be really important, going beyond the usual suspects.
So we just had a piece on Skift that basically is a study that says 6% of companies are willing to pay extra for greener travel. So we've got a huge challenge here. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it's really tough, for companies. I think it's tough for individual travelers. I think whenever we're shifting the burden from the industry taking action to travelers having to pay more, I think we start to lose. I think the industry itself, there's such a huge ROI in investing in this space. And I think that's really where the burden should be, and much less so on the side of consumers. I think it becomes, if we make sustainability inconvenient, if we make sustainability more expensive, we really are starting to lose many people. I mean, this idea of mainstreaming, we're not going to get there if we're making it inconvenient and more expensive for people. And I think that there could definitely be a backlash from consumers if we start to do that as well. Many of us in the travel industry are the ones who hold the keys to the solution. And I think it's really on the industry itself to start accelerating action.
Paul, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think looking for solutions where they're right in front of you. For example, garden tourism. You can look at food sustainability, urban gardens, biomimicry. There's so many solutions all the way around that don't need to add costs, but it's about expanding the reach and partnership. And back to your comment about 6% of companies,
Yes.
ultimately that will go back to governance. When regulatory frameworks and stock exchanges and private equity start making ESG goals mandatory, those numbers will start to shift, right? And I think that's important. So I think as our job at a destination is to look for solutions to bring those players together, and we can't give up hope. We just have to keep moving forward, right? So.
No, we can't give up hope. So collaboration, looking for solutions that are right in front of you, and I guess just keep pushing forward on sustainability action, not just talk.
Yeah, and that's good business. It is good business, and I think we can demonstrate that we can win in business by doing the right things.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Aditi and Paul, so much today for your insights, and I look forward to seeing you at another conference.
Thank you so much.
Take care.